This story takes us into the dark chapter of Northern England's history, where between 1975 and 1980, Peter Sutcliffe terrorized the streets of West Yorkshire and Greater Manchester, killing 13 women and attacking many others. The case stretched across major industrial cities including Leeds, Bradford, Manchester, Huddersfield, and Halifax. What began with the murder of Wilma McCann in October 1975 would become one of Britain's most extensive manhunts, involving an estimated 2.5 million police hours and fundamentally changing how major criminal investigations are conducted. Yorkshire had been the beating heart of Britain's industrial revolution, with its wool and textile industry transforming small villages into bustling mill towns. Leeds, Bradford, and Halifax became centres of global wool and worsted production, with Bradford earning the title of wool capital of the world. The region's steam-powered mills and canal networks had created prosperity, but also brought rapid population growth and harsh working conditions that shaped the character of these tight-knit communities. By the 1970s, these former industrial powerhouses were grappling with economic decline, but they retained their strong sense of community identity that would be tested by the terror that was about to unfold. Peter William Sutcliffe was born on June 2, 1946, in Bingley, Yorkshire, to John and Kathleen Sutcliffe. He was the eldest of 6 children in a working-class Catholic family. Peter was small, shy, and introverted, quite different from his father John, who was described as big, burly, sporty, and sociable. While John was often absent working or socializing, Peter stayed close to his mother Kathleen. The household was troubled. John Sutcliffe was very jealous and constantly accused Kathleen of having affairs, though it was actually John who was being unfaithful. This created an atmosphere where contempt for women became normalized. Young Peter witnessed his father beat his mother often and sided with her, which led to him being called a sissy by others. Some experts believe this early exposure to domestic violence and the complex feelings about women it created would later influence his crimes. In August 1974, Peter married Sonia, the only woman he had ever dated seriously. Due to his irregular employment, the newlyweds were forced to move in with Sonia's parents for financial reasons. Unknown to his wife and her family, Peter was spending his spare money on prostitutes, often cruising Yorkshire's red light areas with a friend named Trevor Birdsall. In June 1975, Peter got his heavy goods vehicle license, taking a job as a lorry driver. This job gave him the freedom to come and go as he pleased, setting the stage for what was to come. The first documented incident occurred in September 1969, when Sutcliffe came to police attention in Bradford's red light area for possessing a hammer, though he wasn't charged. This early incident would later seem prophetic. His earliest known attack where he attempted to kill someone was in July 1975, when he struck 36-year-old Anna Rogalski with a hammer and slashed her with a knife. Because someone nearby heard the noise and he was forced to flee, she survived. He tried to attack 2 more women the same way in August before successfully committing his first murder. On October 30, 1975, 26-year-old Wilma McCann became Sutcliffe's first murder victim. A mother of 4 from Chapeltown in Leeds, she had been out drinking and was making her way home when Sutcliffe struck her twice with a hammer and then stabbed her 15 times in the stomach, neck, and abdomen. Her body was discovered by a milkman on the Prince Philip playing fields, just a few hundred yards from her home on Scott Hall Avenue. The murder sparked a massive police operation involving 11,000 interviews, but no arrests were made. This allowed Sutcliffe to continue his killing spree. Just 11 weeks later, he struck again in Leeds. On January 20, 1976, 42-year-old Emily Jackson became his second victim. A mother of 3 who had turned to prostitution due to dire financial circumstances after her husband persuaded her to do so, she was murdered near the Gaiety pub in Leeds where she had been soliciting. Sutcliffe stabbed her 52 times and left distinctive clues at the scene. The attacks continued with a terrifying pattern. Sutcliffe's method was consistent. He would approach women, often prostitutes, on the streets, strike them with a hammer to render them unconscious, then mutilate them with knives or screwdrivers. He would pull their upper body clothing up to their armpits and lower body clothing down to their ankles before carrying out his attacks. Throughout 1977, the attacks escalated. In February, he killed 28-year-old Irene Richardson, another prostitute, in Leeds. In April, he murdered 32-year-old Patricia Atkinson in her Bradford flat, leaving behind a boot print on blood-stained sheets, another clue that would later prove significant. But it was his next victim that changed everything. On June 26, 1977, 16-year-old Jane MacDonald, a shop assistant, was making her way home from a night out when she missed her bus and couldn't find a taxi. As she walked past a playground, Sutcliffe delivered 3 quick blows to her head with a hammer, dragged her onto waste ground, and stabbed her to death. Jane's murder marked a turning point. As one former journalist noted, prior to that point, the fear had been exclusively felt by working prostitutes. But from Jane MacDonald on there was this feeling that no woman was safe. The national press attention intensified, and the killer was officially dubbed the Yorkshire Ripper, drawing comparisons to the infamous Jack the Ripper of Victorian London. The public panic had little effect on Sutcliffe. He continued his attacks, with only chance interruptions saving some victims. In July 1977, it was only a barking dog that stopped him from killing Maureen Long. The randomness of who lived and who died added to the terror gripping the region. In October 1977, Sutcliffe travelled to Manchester where he killed 20-year-old prostitute Jean Jordan. After the murder, he realised he had given her a brand new £5 note that could be traced. In a panic, he returned to the scene a week later to retrieve her handbag, then came back again to move her body. The £5 note proved to be a crucial lead. Police traced its serial number to the payroll of Yorkshire haulage company T&W Clark, which employed Sutcliffe. Detectives interviewed him twice during this investigation, but he provided an alibi placing him at a family house warming party, and his wife backed up his story. This was just the beginning of Sutcliffe's remarkable ability to evade capture despite repeated police contact. The year 1978 brought more violence. In January, Sutcliffe murdered 21-year-old Yvonne Pearson in Bradford, stuffing horsehair into her mouth and hiding her body under an old sofa where it remained undiscovered for 2 months. Just 10 days later, he killed 18-year-old Helen Ritker near railway arches in Huddersfield, dumping her body in a nearby timber yard. In May 1978, he struck in Manchester again, murdering 40-year-old Vera Millward, a mother of 7. He hit her over the head and stabbed her several times before leaving her body in the grounds of Manchester Royal Infirmary. This Manchester murder bore all the Yorkshire Ripper's hallmarks, leading Manchester and West Yorkshire police to officially join forces in their hunt for the killer. As the investigation expanded, so did the pressure on police. The inquiry became one of the largest ever conducted by British police forces, involving thousands of officers and eventually consuming an estimated 2.5 million police hours. The investigation was hampered by the technology of the time. All information was stored on paper index cards, with so many cards needed that rooms holding them required reinforced floors. Without computers, cross-referencing information was extremely difficult. Then came what would prove to be the investigation's greatest mistake. In 1978, police received letters and an audio tape from someone claiming to be the Ripper. The sender, calling himself Jack, in reference to Jack the Ripper, had a distinctive Wearside accent and provided details that seemed to match the crimes. The hoax tape, later attributed to someone nicknamed Wearside Jack, completely misdirected the police investigation for years. FBI profilers John Douglas and Robert Ressler, who were consulted on the case in 1979, correctly assessed that the letters and tape were from a hoaxer. They argued that the real killer was not the type of extroverted person who would communicate with police, but rather a quiet, introverted, woman-hating type. However, Chief Inspector George Oldfield dismissed their profile, unable to accept that he had been so easily misled. The false leads didn't stop Sutcliffe. In April 1979, he killed for the first time in Halifax, murdering 19-year-old Josephine Whittaker, a building society clerk whose body was found in Savile Park. This was the second time he had killed a woman who was not known to be a sex worker, further expanding the fear among all women in the region. In September 1979, he murdered 20-year-old Bradford University student Barbara Leach after she had been out at a pub near the university. The following year brought 2 more murders. 47-year-old civil servant Marguerite Walls was killed in Leeds in August 1980, and 20-year-old Leeds University student Jacqueline Hill was murdered in November 1980. Throughout this period, Sutcliffe was interviewed a total of 9 times by police before his eventual arrest. His car had been spotted repeatedly in red light districts, and he had been connected to various pieces of evidence, yet he managed to talk his way out of suspicion each time. At one encounter, officers even failed to notice that he was wearing boots that matched a print left at a crime scene. The reign of terror was affecting daily life across northern England. As Sutcliffe's brother Carl later recalled, My own sisters used to walk around with knives in their handbags, although they were probably the safest people on the planet from the Yorkshire Ripper. But they had no idea that it was our brother Peter. Women changed their routines, avoided going out alone at night, and lived in constant fear. Critics later pointed out that the investigation was hampered by sexism and the devaluation of sex workers. Many of Sutcliffe's victims were prostitutes, and their deaths were not given as much attention by police as they should have been. Victim shaming was common, with details about the murdered women's sex lives and living conditions published alongside the details of their killings. Finally, in January 1981, luck and good police work combined to end the nightmare. On January 2, 1981, Sutcliffe was arrested in Sheffield by South Yorkshire police officers who found him in a car with false number plates along with sex worker Olivia Reevers, who survived the encounter. The false plates had been Sutcliffe's attempt to avoid detection, but they proved to be his downfall. When Sutcliffe was taken to Dewsbury Police Station, officers made a remarkable discovery. He was found to be wearing an inverted V-neck jumper under his trousers, with the sleeves pulled over his legs and the V-neck exposing his genital area. The fronts of the elbows were padded to protect his knees as he knelt over his victims. The sexual implications of this outfit were considered obvious by investigators. After 2 days of intensive questioning, on January 4, 1981, Sutcliffe suddenly confessed to being the Yorkshire Ripper. Over the next day, he calmly described his numerous attacks to shock detectives. He later claimed that God had instructed him to murder his victims, saying the women he killed were filth and bastard prostitutes who were cluttering the streets. At his trial at the Old Bailey in 1981, Sutcliffe was found guilty of 13 murders and 7 attempted murders. He was sentenced to 20 life sentences. At the trial, Sutcliffe himself acknowledged the investigation's failures, saying, "It was just a miracle they did not apprehend me earlier, they had all the facts." Initially sent to HMP Parkhurst on the Isle of Wight, Sutcliffe was later transferred to Broadmoor Secure Psychiatric Hospital in 1984 after prison psychiatrists diagnosed him as mentally ill. He spent decades there before being moved to Frankland Prison in Durham. In 2010, he was told he would never be released. The case's aftermath brought sweeping changes to British policing. Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary, Lawrence Byford, conducted a devastating investigation into West Yorkshire Police's handling of the case. His report transformed police investigations and led to the establishment of the first major inquiry computer programs. The failures highlighted in the Byford report included the over-reliance on the hoax tape, the dismissal of FBI psychological profiling, and the problematic attitudes towards sex workers and women in general. The Byford report also suggested that Sutcliffe may have been responsible for additional victims both during and before his known killing spree. It noted a curious lull in his activities between 1969 and 1975 and concluded that he was likely responsible for numerous other attacks on women between 1969 and 1980 that he never confessed to, not only in West Yorkshire and Manchester but potentially in other regions. The impact on victims' families was immense and long-lasting. 13 women died at Sutcliffe's hands, leaving 23 children without their mothers. The trauma extended through generations. In December 2007, Wilma McCann's eldest daughter Sonia died by suicide, reportedly after years of anguish and depression over her mother's death and its aftermath. The case has continued to generate discussion about policing, media coverage, and societal attitudes toward women and sex workers. Multiple documentaries, books, and television series have examined the crimes and investigation, including a 2020 Netflix documentary called The Ripper, and the 2023 ITV drama, The Long Shadow, which focused on the victims and their families rather than glorifying the killer. Peter Sutcliffe died on November 13, 2020, at the age of 74. He had been admitted to hospital with heart problems and later contracted COVID-19, from which he never recovered. His death marked the end of a life that had caused immeasurable pain and terror across northern England. The Yorkshire Ripper case remains a stark reminder of how investigative failures, societal prejudices, and pure chance can combine to allow evil to flourish. The victims, women from all backgrounds, from teenagers to mothers and grandmothers, deserve to be remembered not as statistics in a notorious case, but as individuals whose lives were cut short by senseless violence. Their legacy lives on in the improved police procedures, the continued fight for women's safety, and the determination that such failures in justice should never happen again. The towns and cities of Yorkshire have moved forward, but the scars remain. The case changed how we think about serial crime investigation, the treatment of victims, and the responsibility of law enforcement to protect the most vulnerable in society. It stands as both a dark chapter in British criminal history and a catalyst for positive change in how we pursue justice for victims of violent crime. Thank you for joining us in examining this crucial chapter of British criminal history. Your engagement helps us continue creating thoughtful documentaries about these significant cases. Please like this video if it was informative, subscribe for more content, and let us know in the comments what case you'd like us to cover next. Until next time.